talk today about the wars of our times. Before I do that, I just want to take a moment to note that it is snowing outside. Let's take a look. I'm feeling this vacation wave from the snow as we are about 2 weeks out from the spring equinox. The spring equinox is a birthing time anyway. But I feel that consciousness and the evolution of consciousness has evolved itself to now align with our current seasonal cycles. So as we move into this spring equinox, perhaps different than all the ones before, we are really experiencing a rebirth. So I wanted to talk about where are we feeling that rebirth? Well, of course, the equinox is masculine feminine balance. Let me see if I can get this to stay here. So as we balance these masculine feminine energies, which are different, we've got a different planetary configuration coming up. We've got Uranus moving into Taurus, and we're entering a new age. We really are entering a different time of being. And so how that shows up in masculine feminine is that instead of balancing these inner components where masculine and feminine are said to be inside, like yoga teaches, and then you've got like the externalized masculine who's the doing, and the internalized feminine who's the receiving. We all get to balance those, okay? We're in a massive yoga of humanity, a uniting. We are in the yoga. So when that occurs and we shatter the previous paradigm mirror, then we're entering the mirrorless age, the cosmic time. And in this cosmic time, we are the Shiva Shakti. We are consciousness and form. That is an integration of all the previous elements now into oneness. So I'm pondering right now how this final integration that happens before we can really embody Shiva Shakti, like what is happening right there. That's what I want to talk about in this video, is this, what are the wars of our times? And of course there are physical wars going on in places in the world, but there's another war. And the war is in our minds. It's a mental war. It's a belief war, if you will. Because as we change paradigms, as we change from the old world where certain structures worked certain ways to, give us this certain experience, those are falling. So just like a war where a city falls, that's also happening to our belief structures. Those mental constructs which have made up the previous paradigm reality are falling to be replaced by the quote-unquote warring nation, which is our higher mind, that really is just coming to take over, to siege our minds. Not really in a violent way, but when we resist, it feels violent, I'm imagining the frontliners on a war that's going head-to-head with spears, and you've got like those people in the front line, those men who just have this fearlessness. Well, I'm either going to die or not die, but here I am at the front and I'm just going. And I'm just trusting and surrendering. And some die, and some made it. And when they made it, they transcended a bit. They transcended a previous reality that said that maybe they were going to die in that war. So that is the same, that's very metaphorical for what's happening now in our minds as we are literally having an old paradigm of how things work die, being taken over, being claimed by the city of the higher mind that has a much more expanded view. If you look back in warring times, there were times when, it was maybe morally incorrect to go take over a city But oftentimes, I mean, I don't know when it wasn't morally correct. Actually not. Oh, it's on your shelf. It's just on top of your paint box. There's a paper right over it that's sort of blocking it. So if you move the paper on top of the paint box, there you go. But oftentimes this war, this body, this army would feel like they had a better idea for this smaller city. So they're coming to impose upon, and things are going to have to change in order for that new to come in. Now, we might have looked at that as negative. Whatever has come from that has come from that. This world has evolved from situations like that. But now the war is in our minds. And so we can take a different approach, and we can say, well, the new belief structure is less limiting. It allows for us to open our minds to greater possibilities if we accept it in. It allows us to evolve our consciousness and transcend the previous reality by suspending previous beliefs in favor of what has yet to be seen. And that's in all areas. In health, our previous paradigm has said this death decay cycle happens, that our bodies, when they're manifesting something as an illness, it's even gone so far as to say that our bodies having babies is like a disease. That's what's, even the medical industry is like removing babies like it's a surgery. And sometimes that's necessary, but it's not always necessary. And we're moving into an age, awesome, where we get to trust our bodies. Our bodies know. Our bodies have innate wisdom. Our bodies have capacity to heal. This is us inhabiting these forms even more, knowing that having to throw out the old belief structure might feel weird for a minute, might feel uncomfortable or difficult, and there's going to be old beliefs that fight you, like maybe it's not true, like maybe your bodies can't really heal yourself, maybe the old paradigm is right. And if you want to cling to that, you will continue with that, and you will leave this reality and come again with a new consciousness, a new youthfulness of consciousness that is more permeable so that you may evolve. That's all that happens. So if you allow your consciousness to be permeable now, you can have that youthfulness and receptivity now. You can evolve now, is what it comes down to. And then what you're evolving into is this new paradigm, this new world. And so the warring zone before the full takeover is in our minds. Wars in our minds. With every thought, we get to choose a defeating thought or a winning thought, or a helpful, supportive thought, an evolutionary thought even. And we're scaling this thing one thought at a time. So it's almost like there's a sword fighter in your mind, or a wrestling person that wants to take you down at every thought. So the thought comes up and it's like, oh, I feel terrible. And then the new part of you is wrestling for, actually, you're not terrible, you're getting stronger. And then the next thought comes, but I've got this pain in my body. But then your wrestling partner of the new mind's like, but that pain means you're growing. And then again the thought comes, but I have never done it before. And the new wrestling partner in your mind of the new world says, there's a first time for everything. There's lots of things you never did before. And we wrestle, we go through this push-pull back and forth with our minds to win the new paradigm, so to speak. And by winning, it's like relaxing into, not identifying anymore with those old beliefs. Because, hey, guess what? You're not your beliefs. You're the all-pervading consciousness that contains it all. Yeah, you're not your beliefs. You experience whatever you put your attention on the most. And yes, some of us have come here to act out ancestral patterns. And not only just that, collective patterns. Some souls are so strong that when they got here and saw the mess we're in, they were like, geez, well, let me take some of that and move it through me as quickly as I can and release that miasm, that distortion for all of this ancestral line or all of this humanity line. And that's what some of the kids are doing right now. Some of the kids are warring in their bodies and minds with stuff that we just haven't figured out yet as a people. We just haven't figured out certain ones. Certain ones we're like, yeah, we don't know what that is. And the kids are like, here, let me bring my fresh consciousness to the matter. My fully steeped God self to the matter. I see our kids as true warriors of even the next level beyond ours, because we're fighting a mental war. Our ancestors fought physical wars, and some of us are in the physical wars. But most of you who are watching this video are not going out to battle with armor and swords today. You are in a mental battle, a silent one. One that sometimes you feel like you're losing. Some reach out to me and say they are depressed every day. And so this mental battle with depression is losing. They feel like they're losing it. So I'm coming to offer some new perspectives, some new outs. Because we can only win when we can think of something that trumps the other belief. If we're like, well, I must have an illness, end of road. That road's done. There's no outs in that road. It's like a dead-end street. So, especially if you feel like the only answers to the dead-end street are like, oh, well, you can take a pharmaceutical. And that's the end of it. So, my words are to offer different roads out of that battle. That when, believe me, I've been in those places. I felt that. I was depressed for 1.5 years straight, so much I couldn't get out of bed, that I was totally degrading in my life, that I was completely just not doing anything. I was, except for writing super sad letters that I never sent over someone that I left, that I got myself into this loop in my mind. And it was like there was no way out. But do you know who let me out of that? My higher mind. And luckily, and maybe because it's my astrology, where all my Sagittarius energy comes in, or maybe it's my winter solstice energy. I don't know what it is, but I'm grateful that one day my higher self came to me in the mirror and was like, wake up, girl. Wake up. And the words, when spoken to myself from myself, rang back through the recesses of me and sought out other explanations, other pathways out of that deep, dark place. And I want to give you some today that not only worked for me and continue to work for me, but seem to be a prevalent viewpoint in so much as I feel like I'm not alone knowing this now, having a strong knowing. that we are evolving our consciousness, that we are in a changing of times, and some of us have known this a very long time with no evidence outside ourselves to agree with us. And so when the depression comes, and you can't sanely say, this is part of the process of my evolution, then it wouldn't work. But just another person to validate that often does help. Just another person saying, this is a part of the evolution. All of our consciousness, and I've literally been feeling this the last few days, I literally feel my brain and chakra centers dumping, and almost like the image of these little dump trucks dumping out all of the particles in my physical that used to serve me in that old paradigm, with all those beliefs. Because that paradigm, if we look at it, and it's medical and governmental and all of the structures that we have set up, our school system, the systems we have are not sustainable. The systems we have built are falling now. And so it is the only way, actually, to move forward without deciding to go out of your body is to be open to the new paradigm that's unveiling itself, where the bridge is, when I feel this low, my consciousness is doing it on purpose, with me, for me, as it's sloughing off all the things I'm moving out of. And rather than identify with that in my bloodstream, the chemicals literally dumping in your bloodstream, the hormones associated with all the thought structures that made up that belief that you are believing in. I mean, think about what a paradigm is. I often imagine it like this multi-dimensional box lens that I'm looking in that contains, yeah, you made slippers? Yeah, that contains all of the aspects of my world. So in a child's world, their paradigm is very different than a grown-up.
It's easy if you can make slippers. You only need
You totally made slippers. Look at this kid. He totally made three-dimensional slippers.
Yes,
Did you show your brother these? These are pretty awesome.
All you have to do is make your foot outline, and then you put on strips, and there you have it. You have slippers.
See, in his paradigm, nobody's told him that he doesn't have the skills to make slippers. So he's like, I can do anything I want. So he wanted to make slippers, and by golly, he made slippers. Those are awesome.
Yeah, these are really cool. I can
They're
put
perfect.
them on myself.
Awesome. So this is the perfect example of paradigm shifting worlds. So what is the difference between his paradigm and my paradigm? So a space in our consciousness exists where certain things told me that life was a certain way, or I came to the idea that life is a certain way from the time I was young until my adulthood. And along the way, I've altered that slightly more and more to make it feel more comfortable and at home and like me. Although some are still just sitting in the paradigm made for them by someone else. And of course, a lot of my paradigm is made by the systems, and that's what I'm saying. But we make our own reality within that. However, we are now bridging into a new paradigm that is not just a personal one, that is a collective one. And the world goes through these cyclical changes at various times. There are a lot of traditions that say there's a 26,000 year cycle, and there are 13,000 year cycles, and there are many more shorter cycles like the planetary cycles, all the way down to the cycles of our years and our days. And we can look within a day and see the evolution of a day. even just the light that moves across the day and away and back again, teaches us that our consciousness is also always going through cycles, evolving. So, as we move paradigms, what I'm trying to say is the war is in our minds, what we choose to think and believe. And some people may argue with me about this in the depression piece. And this is why I think having a coach to assist is very helpful, to continually remind again and again that this is part of the process. Rather than trying to get out of it and think that depression is bad or clinical or an illness that you're trying to heal from, what if it is the perfect thing you've created for you at this time to get into the depth of you that is required in order for you to bring your greatness forth into the world? And that's really what I'm saying. Thank you so much for joining me.